There are moments in a man's heart when love doesn't just touch his life, it transforms the very essence of who he is. A man exposes the parts of himself he normally keeps hidden only to a woman he truly loves. This unfolding is not sudden, but a slow, inward process that begins when his soul senses safety in her presence. For much of his life, he carries a private chamber that no one can enter, a place where his fears, doubts, childhood scars, and quiet longings reside. This inner room is guarded fiercely because life has taught him that vulnerability invites judgment, that weakness can be exploited, and that emotions, if spoken carelessly, can be turned against him. He becomes a keeper of secrets, sometimes even from himself, burying what feels too delicate to reveal. But when he meets a woman he deeply loves, something inside starts to change, something instinctual and timeless. It's not that he consciously chooses to be vulnerable, rather, his defenses soften naturally, responding to a warmth he cannot fully explain. He begins to reveal not only facts about himself, but truths about his inner world, truths he has never voiced before. He may share dreams he once chased, but let go of because life demanded practicality. He may confess wounds he tries to pretend no longer hurt. He speaks of fears he has quietly carried, fear of failing those he loves, fear of not being enough, fear of losing himself to the expectations around him. In her presence, speaking these truths no longer feels dangerous, but liberating. Her understanding becomes a refuge, a space where he can set aside the armor he wears everywhere else. He allows her to see his vulnerability, the part of him that craves comfort, that longs to be held emotionally even when he rarely asks for it. He allows her to witness the child within him who still hopes for reassurance, the man who sometimes feels lost, and the protector who silently bears burdens he never wants to impose on anyone. This revealing is rarely dramatic. It unfolds in small, nearly invisible gestures. He might recount a memory from his past that shaped him, speaking casually, though his heart knows this is not shared lightly. He may whisper about his insecurities, not because he doubts himself, but because he is unsure how the world will receive these admissions. With her, though, the fear is smaller. He trusts that she will not weaponize his honesty or judge it as weakness. Instead, she listens, and her presence turns his confessions into acts of courage. When a man truly loves, he does not retreat into silence. Even if quiet has always been his safest refuge, he allows her to hear his unpolished, unfinished thoughts. He talks about what bothers him, what inspires him, and what makes him question himself. Most importantly, he lets her witness his emotions in their raw form. The frustration he normally swallows, the sadness he typically denies, the tenderness he often masks with humor. He shows her his whole self, not the filtered version he presents to the world. He entrusts her with parts of himself he doesn't always understand. He invites her into the labyrinth of his mind, where old stories and hidden fears form patterns he has never consciously studied. He senses that she can navigate this inner maze without judgment. Sharing with her becomes a form of cleansing, helping him see himself more clearly. He may not speak it directly, but through the way he opens up, he communicates that she is the only person he dares to be unguarded with. He reveals his shadow too, the part that makes mistakes, the part that becomes overwhelmed, the part weighed down by shame, not because he expects her to fix it, but because he believes she deserves to know the full truth of the man she loves. Every time he opens up, he takes a risk, stepping into the unknown and trusting that she will hold his truth gently. This act is his deepest gift. It shows that his love is not merely emotional or physical, but spiritual. It demonstrates that he sees her not as an outsider, but as someone whose presence reaches the very core of his being, someone who has earned access to the hidden spaces of his heart. A man in true love reorganizes his inner life to protect the connection. This process is not loud or dramatic, but a quiet reshaping of his priorities, habits, and the subtle pathways of his mind. Before love, his life followed routines built over years, routines formed by survival, ambition, or personal freedom. When he loves deeply, something realigns within him. He begins to assess what truly matters, not because someone told him to change, but because his heart recognizes the weight and significance of the bond. The relationship becomes a living presence, woven into every decision, large or small. He acts with awareness, understanding that his choices ripple out and affect the woman he loves. This transformation is not forced. It arises naturally from the instinctive truth that a man in genuine love feels a responsibility for the security of the bond, not in a controlling way, but in a way that honors its depth. He treats the relationship like a delicate flame cupped in his hands, aware that carelessness, distraction, or neglect could weaken it. He becomes intentional, thoughtful about his words, his reactions to conflict, and the way he handles stress. He recognizes that consistency is a form of emotional protection. When a man truly loves, he begins to see life through a new lens. Even the way he manages his time takes on significance. Time that might have been spent on trivial distractions is now invested in nurturing the connection. This does not mean abandoning his individuality or passions, but finding balance so the relationship can grow without stifling who he is. He becomes aware of what drains him, what strengthens him, and what clarifies his mind, because he wants to show up fully, not in fragments. He sets boundaries with those who bring chaos or negativity into his life, understanding that protecting the bond also means safeguarding his own emotional space. A man in authentic love makes decisions with thought, not impulse, considering how each choice might impact the stability of the relationship. His love reshapes not only his actions, but the quiet rhythm of his life, infusing care, attention, and purpose into everything he does. He learns to move through the world with the awareness that the bond he cherishes is fragile yet powerful, demanding presence, respect, and devotion. In this way, love does not just change him. It becomes the lens through which he experiences the world, guiding him to live with intention, heart, and courage. He becomes aware of how his actions reflect his inner commitment. He may start thinking about the future in ways he never considered before, not because he feels pressure to change, but because love naturally broadens his perspective. He begins to imagine what long-term stability looks like, what emotional security truly feels like, and what it means to create a life where both partners feel rooted and supported. Love awakens a sense of responsibility that feels natural, not like a burden. He also grows more emotionally present. He pays attention not only to the words she speaks, but also to what she leaves unsaid. He notices shifts in her tone, subtle changes in her mood, and small signs of discomfort or stress. This is not overthinking or hypervigilance. It is attunement, a quiet psychological connection that forms when a man's heart is genuinely invested. He wants to understand her world, not from a distance, but from within. So he listens differently, with more patience, more curiosity, and more tolerance. He is no longer driven solely by his own perspective because her well-being becomes linked with his own. Another way this inner transformation shows itself is in how he handles conflict. A man who doesn't deeply care might respond to disagreements with indifference, defensiveness, or avoidance. But a man who loves deeply becomes conscious of how his reactions affect the bond. He seeks to communicate with clarity rather than anger, to understand rather than dominate, and to connect rather than win. He pursues resolution because unresolved tension creates cracks in the relationship he is committed to preserving. Even when he slips or makes mistakes, he returns with sincerity, recognizing that accountability is one of the deepest expressions of love. Love also makes him intentional about nurturing the relationship. He begins to see affection not merely as emotional expression, but as maintenance, a way of keeping the connection alive. He becomes more thoughtful, consistent, and expressive in ways that reflect his inner dedication. This may show in small acts of service, words of reassurance, or steady reliability that quietly communicates, "I am here and I am not going anywhere." His love becomes a disciplined commitment, not born from fear of loss, but from understanding that something meaningful deserves care. This reorganization of his inner life is one of the clearest signs of genuine love because it shows that the relationship is not simply a source of enjoyment, but something he protects with intention. The relationship becomes part of his daily thoughts, not as an obsession, but as an anchor that guides his decisions and steadies his path. Through these changes, he demonstrates that love is not just a feeling. It is responsibility, devotion, and a quiet yet powerful commitment to preserving something precious. A man who truly loves becomes both a mirror and a guide for the woman he cherishes. This transformation is not something he forces or plans. It rises naturally from the depth of his connection with her. His presence takes on a special sensitivity, an intuitive listening that goes beyond ordinary attention. He does not simply hear her words. He senses the emotions behind them. He notices subtle shifts in her voice, the weight in her posture, or the tension in her silence. This awareness is not surveillance. It is attunement, the organic resonance that forms when his heart aligns with hers. He becomes a mirror for her truths, not to control her, but to help her see herself clearly when doubt clouds her perspective. He notices qualities in her she may overlook, reminding her of her strengths during moments of fragility and reflecting her resilience when she temporarily forgets it. He reflects her value back to her when the world becomes overwhelming, helping her recognize the beauty in her own complexity. This reflection is gentle and never intrusive. It does not tell her who she should be, but helps her remember who she already is beneath the layers of pressure, fear, or past wounds. When uncertainty arises, he provides clarity not by giving answers, but by helping her reconnect with her own inner guidance. His presence becomes a psychological anchor, steadying her while respecting her independence. At the same time, he becomes a guide, not someone who leads her life for her, but someone who stands beside her as she navigates her own journey. His guidance is quiet and steady, emerging through support, encouragement, and emotional consistency. He understands that the woman he loves is not someone to shape, but someone whose growth and potential he wants to see fully realized. Through his presence and actions, he shows her what it feels like to be emotionally safe. This safety becomes a foundation that allows her to pursue dreams, confront fears, and embrace parts of herself she once hid. His guidance is also evident in how he responds to her emotions. He does not retreat from her vulnerability, nor dismiss her sensitivity. Instead, he creates space for it, understanding that love requires patience and an open heart. He learns when to offer reassurance and when simply to be present in silence. Sometimes the most powerful guidance is simply being there, saying without words, "You are not alone." Through this, he teaches her without instructing, showing that true strength is not about solving everything, but about standing alongside someone through both chaos and calm. He also guides through his own character. The way he handles challenges, responsibilities, and emotional struggles becomes a model, not because she needs one, but because his authenticity inspires her growth. She witnesses how he faces fears instead of avoiding them, admits mistakes instead of hiding them, and seeks truth even when it is uncomfortable. This integrity quietly encourages her to approach life with courage. His growth fuels hers, and her growth fuels his, creating a cycle of mutual expansion that strengthens the bond. A man who truly loves also supports her ambitions without jealousy or insecurity. He wants her to rise, not for his own gain, but because seeing her grow is a joy in itself. He becomes her supporter, her encourager, her steady pillar. He listens to her dreams not as fantasies, but as real possibilities, offering help without overshadowing her independence. Whether her path is certain or uncertain, he makes it clear he is present through all phases of change. His faith in her abilities becomes a quiet force that strengthens her confidence and helps her move forward with courage. He holds her dreams with care, as if they are delicate seeds he wants to protect while she nurtures them into reality. He also leads through emotional honesty. He does not hide behind walls or disguise his true feelings with false calm. Instead, he shares his inner world in a way that encourages her to share hers. This mutual openness creates a deep exchange of truth, a psychological closeness that allows both of them to understand each other beyond the surface. His honesty becomes a quiet light, illuminating the places where clarity is needed, helping her navigate situations or internal struggles with more perspective. Through all of this, he does not aim to be perfect. He simply strives to be present, attentive, and genuine. His role as a mirror and guide is not a burden, but an expression of love. His heart seeks to understand hers, not from obligation, but from devotion. He becomes someone who helps her see her potential, her beauty, her strength, and her depth more clearly. By doing this, he not only strengthens her path but also deepens the bond they share. When a man truly loves, he becomes both a reflection of her truth and a companion on her journey, walking beside her with intention, patience, and loyalty. A man deeply in love faces his own darkness to grow for the woman he cherishes. This process is not easy, glamorous, or comfortable. It is an inner struggle that demands humility, honesty, and courage to confront the parts of himself he has long avoided. Everyone carries shadows, old wounds, regrets, fears hidden beneath the surface, and emotional habits shaped by unprocessed experiences. For most men, these shadows remain hidden because facing them feels like reopening old wounds. But love has a way of bringing these hidden parts into the light, not to punish, but to transform. When he truly loves a woman, he realizes that his unhealed parts can unintentionally harm her as well as himself. This understanding sparks the courage to turn inward. He begins noticing patterns in his own behavior, especially those that appear in conflict or stress. If he tends to shut down emotionally, he recognizes that this silence may make her feel abandoned. If he reacts with impatience or defensiveness, he understands these reactions stem from unresolved tension within himself, not from her. He sees that love cannot grow on a foundation of denial, so he examines the origins of his habits. He recalls moments when he learned to suppress emotions to appear strong, or when he pushed people away to protect himself from disappointment. He sees how these strategies, once protective, now block the connection he wants to build. This awareness becomes a turning point. Facing his darkness means acknowledging ways he could unintentionally cause pain and admitting habits he uses to escape discomfort, whether through isolation, distraction, or emotional withdrawal. Instead of avoiding these truths, he sits with them. This act alone is love in action because it shows he cares enough to change the parts of himself that could hurt the relationship. He does not aim for perfection. He aims for awareness. He observes his reactions honestly, questioning why he feels anger in moments that do not call for it, why he fears vulnerability, or why he wants to withdraw even when he longs for closeness. Understanding these internal dynamics gives him the power to respond differently. As he grows more conscious, he begins making intentional choices. When fear urges him to pull away, he chooses to stay present. When pride wants him to argue, he chooses to listen. When insecurity whispers that he is not enough, he reminds himself that love does not demand perfection, only effort, honesty, and sincerity. In this way, he slowly rewrites the patterns that his past shaped. Every step is an internal act of devotion, building him into a safer, more reliable partner. He wants to offer her the version of himself capable of loving fully, not the version shaped by unhealed wounds. This confrontation with his inner shadows also teaches him humility. He learns to apologize without excuses, take responsibility without shame, and express his feelings without hiding behind silence. Vulnerability is no longer weakness, but strength. He understands that showing his fears and insecurities to her does not make him less of a man. It makes him more authentic, more connected, more real. Emotional openness becomes a gift, given not to the world, but to the woman who occupies a special place in his life. This honesty becomes a bridge, deepening the bond between them. Facing his inner shadows also means confronting the parts of himself resistant to growth. He notices the moments he wants to shut down instead of communicate, when frustration overwhelms compassion, or when he feels the urge to protect his ego rather than nurture the relationship. Instead of acting on these impulses, he slows down. He chooses awareness over autopilot, understanding over self-protection, love over fear. This is not a one-time transformation, but a continuous daily commitment to becoming a better version of himself. Through this journey, he begins to feel lighter, more in control of his emotions, more aware of his triggers, and more deliberate in his actions. This inner clarity strengthens the relationship by creating stability and trust. The woman he loves notices this growth not in grand gestures, but in subtle ways. The softness in his tone, the patience in his responses, the willingness to engage in difficult conversations without walking away. She feels his love not only through his actions, but through his courage to confront his own inner darkness for the sake of their bond. A man who truly loves understands that his shadows are not to be hidden from her, but healed within himself. He knows that love is sustained not by charm, gifts, or words alone, but by the willingness to evolve. His courage to face his inner struggles becomes one of the greatest acts of love, not because she demands it, but because he wants their connection to be built on truth, awareness, and emotional maturity. Through this process of self-confrontation, he grows not only as a man but as a partner, showing her that his commitment is not just in what he does for her, but in the transformation of his inner world. A man who truly loves moves with a form of loyalty that is quiet, steady, and unwavering, not loud, dramatic, or seeking attention. This loyalty does not show itself through grand gestures or bold declarations, but through consistent daily choices that reveal where his heart truly lies. For him, loyalty is more than staying committed. It is being emotionally present, mentally reliable, and spiritually aligned with the relationship he values. He understands that genuine devotion is not measured by how loudly he speaks about love, but by how consistently he shows up when life becomes challenging, when misunderstandings arise, or when stress threatens to pull him away from the bond he treasures. His loyalty becomes a living presence, something she can feel in the way he communicates, honors her, and prioritizes the connection without needing to announce it. This kind of loyalty grows from intention rather than impulse. When he truly loves, he becomes aware that his choices affect not only himself, but the emotional stability of the woman he cherishes. He knows that even small decisions, how he speaks about her to others, how he reacts when tempted by distractions, or how he behaves when she isn't watching, reflect the depth of his commitment. He does not see loyalty as a limitation or loss of freedom. He sees it as a sacred responsibility. For him, loyalty is a measure of integrity, a reflection of how he honors her trust, even when it would be easier not to. It involves considering how his actions shape the emotional environment of their relationship. He carries this devotion quietly, not because he hides it, but because it becomes who he is when love enters his life. A man deeply in love demonstrates loyalty through consistency. He does not appear intensely one day and vanish the next. He does not show affection only when it benefits him. Instead, he remains steady, even in the ordinary, unnoticed moments. His presence is reliable not only during celebrations or peaceful times, but also during moments of confusion, disagreement, or vulnerability. His devotion is visible in the steadiness of his words, the dependability of his support, and the predictability of his character. He does not leave her guessing about his feelings or intentions because he knows that uncertainty weakens trust. He offers clarity through his actions, remaining close even when life pulls him in many directions. His loyalty also manifests in the way he protects her heart, not through control or possessiveness, but through emotional responsibility. He understands that her trust is precious, fragile, and vulnerable to carelessness. He becomes mindful of how he speaks during conflict, attentive to her fears, and thoughtful about how he handles her vulnerability. He does not exploit her sensitivity or weaponize her feelings. Instead, he becomes a guardian of her emotional safety. He chooses honesty even when lies would be easier, commitment even when escape would be simpler, and kindness even when frustration arises. Through these choices, he shows that loyalty is more than staying. It is honoring the bond with integrity. Loyalty also means presence during adversity. When life grows difficult, when misunderstandings occur, or when she withdraws into silence, he does not abandon her emotionally. He remains connected, seeking understanding rather than retreating. He knows that relationships are sustained not by perfection, but by the willingness to weather storms together. His loyalty becomes a stabilizing force she can lean on when the world feels uncertain. He does not fear emotional depth. He moves toward it with patience and care, knowing that loyalty is proven not by convenience but by endurance, the willingness to remain grounded even when challenges weigh heavily. A loyal man protects the relationship from outside pressures. He establishes boundaries with people who bring unnecessary drama, temptation, or negativity, not out of restriction, but because he values the connection he shares with her. He understands that respect extends beyond the relationship itself, to how he navigates the world outside it. His loyalty shows in the way he speaks about her, represents their relationship in public, and maintains respect even in her absence. Through all of these actions, his loyalty becomes a quiet devotion that strengthens the foundation of their bond. He does not feel the need to prove his commitment through grand gestures or public displays. His loyalty is present in everyday choices, in the care he takes with her feelings, the steadiness of his presence, the honesty of his words, and the thoughtfulness in his decisions. It is visible in the way he holds the connection with both strength and tenderness. A man who truly loves does not simply stay. He stays with purpose, integrity, and a heart that refuses to waver. When a man deeply loves a woman, his inner world changes in ways invisible to others, but clear to her. He reveals the parts of himself once guarded, reorganizes his priorities with quiet intention, becomes a mirror reflecting her strength, and walks beside her as a guide through growth. He confronts his inner darkness not out of guilt, but out of a deep desire to protect the bond they share. And through it all, he moves with a loyalty that is steady, unwavering, and grounded in genuine devotion. These acts are never forced or performed. They arise naturally from love that reaches into the soul and reshapes it from within. This is the kind of love that does not fade over time because it is built not on words alone, but on effort, transformation and authenticity that endures even in silence.